Hello, I'm Mike Braden Bones. I'm Landscape Conservation Area Officer for the South East in Essex Wildlife Trust. It's 30 Days Wild. So for my 30 Days Wild, it's something which really preoccupies me for about 365 days, and that's trees. Trees hold a very special place in my heart, and I'm sure a lot of people watching's hearts. I guess we evolved in trees, we lived in trees, we've relied on trees for so long that they've almost become something we take for granted. But if you stop to look at them, they're amazing beings. We relied on trees once for pretty much everything, for food, for shelter, until cheap plastic and metal came along. We relied on them to make most of our household items. We don't have that connection anymore, but I think there's still some kind of spiritual connection. Wherever you go in the world, there are folklore around trees to do with spirituality, the things they meant to people, as well as their practical uses. So, given it's such a vast subject, I can only skim the surface. But let's talk a little bit about some of our trees and what their folklore is. I guess you start with A for apple. The first tree. It's a good enough place to start. The apple tree is the tree, at least in Europe, we thought of as the tree that was in the Garden of Eden. And it's a strange coincidence that the Latin word for apple, malus, can be confused with malus, an apple, or malus, an evil. I don't know about that, but it's certainly in European folklore long been associated with love. There's so many tales of peeling an apple peel and it spells out your lover's name, or pricking the skin to find out the initials of your lover. They're a beautiful tree. Of course, there's the fruit as well. The 5 stars that make up the seeds were often associated with magic because they formed a pentagram and cut across the grain. We have wassail, which means all health. And that's still a tradition carried out in orchards in the West Country to bring health to the trees to ensure a good cider harvest. Hazel trees. The hazel, apart from its use as walking sticks and wattle hurdles, has obviously always been special for its nuts. But there's another tale that's very popular in Celtic folklore. It's said that the tree of wisdom, the hazel tree, grew over a pool. There were 9 of them. The nuts dropped into the water and they were eaten by the salmon of knowledge. Finn, a great Celtic warrior, was supposed to be cooking one once and he burnt his finger. He licked his finger and gained the wisdom of the salmon of knowledge. The elderberry tree. This is a fantastic tree. I know woodsmen to this day who won't cut it because it's said to harbour the fairy queen spirit. If not the fairy queen, then some sort of sprite. And it's true that when you put the wood on the fire, it lets out a piercing scream, which was thought to be the screams of the fairies. Pretty gruesome, but it's actually just sap. The strong smell also is associated with death. The twigs could be used for making fire too. Ash, the ash tree. There's so much folklore surrounding ash trees, it's hard to know where to start. Most famously, it was the Norse world tree. The bunches of keys were said to bring good fortune. These are the seed pods. Later on in the year, hopefully, we'll have a load more ash trees growing around here. Yggdrasil. Odin's tree was the ash tree. Ishk. The name in Anglo-Saxon means spear, and Ishkar were spear people. So it's fair to say that this tree's uses haven't really changed in about 3,000 years that we know of, possibly longer. Certainly we still use it today for perhaps not spears, but similar baseball bats, snooker cues, axe helves, Apart from that, it was also the tree which Odin hung himself from to get wisdom. His eyes were pecked out by a raven, and he gained the sight of the raven that way. Yggdrasil was also the tree whose roots were in hell and whose branches were in heaven, and somewhere in the middle was us. Not only that, it's also long been thought of as a tree which is good for curing ills, particularly for children. A tradition was that newborn babies would be given a spoonful of ash sap to keep the ill away before they left their mother's bed. It was also used to cure warts and, strangely enough, to protect you from shrews. Don't ask me. The oak, possibly our most beloved of trees, hearts of oak. The tree that built our navy and our houses. Thor's tree, god of thunder. It was said to protect you from lightning, which is ironic given that such a tall tree was quite often struck by lightning. It's also of course famous for Oak Apple Day, which commemorates when Charles I was said to have hidden an oak tree to escape the wandering Roundheads. Such a stately tree couldn't be more well known. Associated with Robin Hood and Herne the Hunter, it's still used to this day as gospel oaks in the beating of the bounds on rogation days, to mark the boundaries of parishes. Hawthorn, the May tree, a tree associated with the plague, probably due to the smell of the flowers in spring. It's still used as an indicator of the forecasting of weather. Cast not a clout till May be out refers not to the month, but to an alternative name, the May tree. Also, the fruits, the haws, bitter tasting, beloved by birds. Often overlooked tree, and more of a shrub in hedges than a full-grown tree, but beautiful nevertheless. And we have to finish with this, our most treasured tree, the yew tree. The oldest trees in Britain are yews. They are often found in churchyards. Strangely enough, they may predate the churches. They were held to be sacred to the Druids, and their sacred ceremonies were held underneath yews. It may have something to do with the fact that on hot, still days, yew trees give off a toxic gas which is mildly hallucinogenic. The name yew in Latin is taxus, whence we get the name toxic. That almost every part of yew is deadly. Because it's so long-lived and an evergreen, it's long been associated with both life and death. Recent studies have found that a chemical constituent of yew may help in the cure of cancer. Nowadays, it is most often found in churchyards, some, like this one, at least 1,000 years old. Not much grows beneath its dense dark shade. But it provides a quiet resting place.